Hello. This week we learning Parsha Tazria Metzorah. The Parsha of Tazria continues with the discussion of laws of Tumah and Vetachara, translated as ritual, impurity, and purity. A woman giving birth should undergo a process of purification, which includes immersing in the mikveh and bringing offerings in the holy temple. All male infants are to be circumcised on the 8th day of their life, and straight away I would like to look at the important question here. Why a woman who gave birth to a child is considered impure, and why there is a difference in number of days before purification subject to the gender of the child. If it's a boy, it's only 7 days she should wait until she can be purified, and if it's a girl, it's 14 days. It's very perplexing actually to understand this requirement. Rabbi Moshe Gerwitz explains that Tumah, which is ritual impurity, is a spiritual status that impacts any person and his involvement in all aspects of Jewish life. Widely misunderstood and often mistranslated as unclean. Tumah is mistranslated as unclean. In reality, Tumah is a deficit of sorts, like a generally associated with death or contact with spiritually impure objects or people. On the face of it, it seems very odd that Torah would ascribe a spiritual deficit to childbirth, a natural and especially beautiful event in the life of any family. This law is that the mother is impure for 7 days if it's a boy and 14 days if it's a girl born, which it's all very hard to understand. Citing the teaching of the Kotzker Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotsk, Rabbi Yozachar Friend explains that this impression stems from misunderstanding of the word Tumah. Contrary to common belief, Tumah is not the flip side of Kedusha, which is sanctity and holiness. Instead, Kedusha is a spiritual force that is present when a man is most high and he's similar to God, and when he's like a potential creator. Tumah represents the vacuum that is created when the creator potential is removed, for many reasons. While alive, for instance, the human being is holy. He is a powerhouse of creative potential. But when he dies, that potential goes together with the neshama, who flies to the spiritual world. And Tumah, this emptiness sets in. A human corpse, in fact, acquires the highest degree of Tumah precisely because of the void, because the void is so great. A woman during pregnancy is most similar to God, and in a sense, she's at the peak of her sanctity. She is not only a potential creator, she is a creator in a literal sense. Exactly, she creates a new life. And once the child is born, however, the woman returns back to her regular status of human being. And that sudden absence, that change of her creative potential while she was pregnant, creates a void only to be filled with Tumah. With this insight, Rabbi Chaim ibn Attar, author of Or HaChaim, explains that the longer period of impurity after the birth of a girl, when a woman is pregnant with a girl, an emerging new creator. So the degree of sanctity of a woman pregnant with a girl is even much higher than the degree of sanctity of a woman pregnant with a boy. And that's why the void, the tumah, created when she is no longer pregnant, and thus it's potentially larger than the vacuum created with the birth of a boy. And this is why a woman who brought to this world a girl, a female, must wait for 14 days before she can be purified. This is what this parsha starts with. But most of this week parsha is dedicated to tzarath, often means translated as leprosy, and is a supernatural plague, basically, which also can afflict not only people but their clothes, the garments, as well as a home, a house. If white or pink patches appear on the person's skin, dark red or green on the clothes or on the house, Kohen is summoned in. That's what it was during the temple times. Judging by various signs, such as an increase in size of the afflicted area, or subject to whether it's changing color, etc. Kohen pronounces this malady, this sickness, it's either impure, tamei, or pure, tahor. A person afflicted with tzara must dwell alone outside of the camp or city until he or she is healed. And let's look at all of this. The afflicted area in a garment is removed if it's a clothes or a house. And if tzara spreads or recurs, the entire garment must be burned. And in ultimate situations, if the house was affected by tzara, the house could be demolished. What do we know about it? There are 7 sins which are known to be reasons for the tzara occurring. Lushan hora, gossip, murder, a vain oath or lying in the court, sexual immorality, arrogance or pride, stealing, theft, and stinginess. What it is, it's a physical manifestation of a spiritual failure of the human being. Most of it is associated with Lushan hora, with gossip. My grandmother used to say, "Allein is the neshumerei," because that in Yiddish, when you are alone, your soul is clean. What she meant by this is when you're alone, you have got nobody to gossip with. And as a result of that, you will not sin. Metzorah affected person, commonly mistranslated as a leper, which is again not exactly correct. This is a person afflicted by a spiritual malady, not contagious. It's not a physical disease, which places him or her in the state of ritual impurity. This week's Torah is detailing how they recovering from Metzorah and how the Kohen should purify the person with a special procedure involving 2 birds, spring water, an earthen vessel, a piece of cedar wood, a scarlet thread, and a bundle of hyssop. But we will concentrate on one aspect of tzara, healing process. A person afflicted by tzara must dwell alone outside of the camp or city until he or she is healed. Once a person was suspected by the priest of tzara, he or she had to wait for 7 days before being examined. And during this period, the afflicted person is in a state of limbo, neither here or there, and psychologically it must be very, very difficult. 7 days. After the first 7 days period, the patient was examined again of his or her condition, and if he or she has improved, the patient was pronounced clean and was allowed to resume normal life within the community. But if the condition had not changed or even worsened, he or she was sent back to the quarantine for yet another 7 days. So finally, after 14 days, the day of final judgment had arrived, so to speak, and after 14 days, the skin condition has improved, so the person pronounced clean. If not, after 14 days, the person has not improved, the condition has changed or became worse, the afflicted person was pronounced unclean and was forced outside the camp as long as the skin disease remained. Reminds you of something? We'll come to that in a few minutes. A person, even just suspected of tzara, was not allowed to live with his family or mingle with the community, with the general population. And of course, during the period that the person was suspected of tzara, they were barred from participating in any religious rituals. So the tzara affected person was isolated. The question is why? Physically, it was not contagious. So, he couldn't affect anybody. It was very embarrassing, yes. So there must be other reason. Because, it was embarrassing because it was visible. It was like a white powder or colored skin, and, it was very visible. And everybody knew the person is a sinner, was some kind of a sinner. And the reason was to allow the person, basically, the segregation, the reason the person was had to be isolated is to be alone with himself or herself, to think about his way of life, what it is he or she has done wrong to deserve this heavy duty, spiritual sickness, and obviously public humiliation. What I'm going to say next is very important. And please don't misunderstand my message. I would like to express my deep sadness over the COVID-19 tragedy which has affected the whole world, which has killed thousands of people around the world and brought grief and difficulties to many families, including loss of loved ones, work, business, financial problems. I think first time in history of our civilization, the whole world is affected by the same way, with the same disease, and the whole world takes approximately the same corrective actions, which is very surprising. The tzara affected person isolation reminds me of our current worldwide isolation requirements. God is telling all of humanity, hello people, your civilization is going in the wrong direction. Please sit at home in isolation and think, who are you? What is important and what is not important in your life? How much you love yourself, or how much you love or hate other people? How much junk you buy and how much of it you use, really? If one is wealthy, how much he or she should help others? Who are not so lucky, maybe, and morals and ethics of our society, and much, much more. We are already starting to see the first changes as a result of this tragic event, which is taking place as we speak now around the world. Suddenly, instead of movie stars and sports stars. The whole world is applauding to doctors, nurses, chemists, policemen, supermarket shelf fillers, checkout people, all everyday people who are risking their health and maybe even their life in order to help the rest of us. People already helping elderly neighbors in many ways. Even going shopping for them, doing shopping for them and bringing it and delivering it and putting it in the right places as well, maybe. I don't know. Maybe our charity organizations deserve more attention and more donations should be given to them. That is the way He, God, wants our civilization to move forward, I think. This calamity is a message to all of us, and isolation is the necessary evil to make us stop and think. What kind of a world we want to return to after COVID-19 pandemic is over? Shabbat Shalom.